During a trip abroad, because he was on vacation, he got a sudden onset of neurological deficit, which is diplopia, vertigo, tinnitus, and posterior headache. And he got also some hemiparesthesia with limb weakness. So the guy went back to France because of this neurological deficit, which is not normal when you are 29. And this is the MR. As you can see, there is a mild infarct, which is seen here due to the occlusion of the perforator. And most important, you see here a giant aneurysm, which is partially thrombosed, which is always a nightmare when you have such an aneurysm. So you have different signal, and here obviously you have a very heterogeneous signal. If you inject gadolinium, then you see that part of the thrombus is a circulating portion and part is thrombosed. This is, they do, as you can see, this is a large aneurysm which is compressing the brainstem. It is seen on both FLAIR and T2. And it's a giant partially thrombosed aneurysm which is located at the proximal part of the basilar trunk with a mass effect. In fact, the patient is having 3 aneurysms. The one which has just been presented, the partially thrombosed aneurysm, but there is also a left carotid cavernous aneurysm, and there is a left P1, P2 aneurysm, which is seen also in this patient, so probably as a congenital disease of aneurysm. So an angio was performed in another center where you see this left P2 aneurysm, but most important is this giant partially thrombosed aneurysm, where you have the fear to have a complication during the treatment. So this is the white vert on the angio, and you can see also the cavernous aneurysm, which is seen on the left side. 3. So for all those aneurysms, we decided to wait because we know that the treatment is very dangerous. And in the other center, we asked for advice and we told them that they should wait a little bit. And as you can see, this is the evolution of the TOF, 4 months, 8 months. And there is always a reorganization of the flow inside the thrombosed portion of this aneurysm. Once again, we don't know too much how they behave. But there is a change in the thrombus. There is a modification in the thrombus. If you look on the FLAIR, it's obvious that the thrombus is not having the same signal if you compare initially 8 months after the discovery. So it will change over time. And we found that after 8 months, maybe there is an increased flow inside the thrombosed portion of this aneurysm. Clinically speaking, the guy is doing well. He has the left hemiparesthesia, which is not that good for a young patient. And he has a diplopia, which is corrected. But the guy is not normal. He doesn't worsen, but he's not normal. He's MRS2, meaning that he doesn't work anymore. And we took the decision to propose the treatment to this young patient. So this is a dual injection on right and left vert at the same time, AP and lateral. And you see that it's a pretty large aneurysm with a dysplastic basilar artery. Of course, you have the P2, which doesn't change. We don't care about it. And this is the 3D view. And as you can imagine, it's difficult to understand how you can manage this kind of things, and especially where are the branches rising from the aneurysm. It's a large one, it's a giant. this is the circulating portion. It means that the overall size of the aneurysm is much bigger because you don't see the thrombosed part of the aneurysm. These are the sizes of the vessel. And we look at the potential patency from the PCOM. And as you can see on the right, there is a huge PCOM. So why we didn't occlude? We didn't occlude because we were a little bit reluctant because the patient is having so many aneurysms in the other thing that if we can save the vessel, maybe it's good for him because we don't know what will happen with the other vessel with his genetic disease. So we decided to perform the treatment in 2 stages. The first one was to perform a posterior fossa craniectomy. Why that? Because when you have to deal with this thrombosed aneurysm, it's a matter of biological reaction. You never know how will behave the thrombus. And especially when you change the thrombus, you may induce a swelling of the aneurysm, which will compress the posterior fossa. And if you deliver a stent or a fluid diverter, then the neurosurgeon, they will be very reluctant to perform a craniectomy if there is a swelling of the aneurysm after the treatment. So believe me or not, it has taken a long time to convince the neurosurgeon to perform a preventive craniectomy of the posterior fossa. They were very reluctant, but we were very persuasive for them to do that. And then 2 months after, we were performing the treatment. So first stage was to perform a balloon test occlusion. So it was to confirm that the right PCOM could supply potentially the basilar artery. So this is the balloon which was used in order to confirm that the right PCOM artery could supply the basilar artery. Then we performed the reconstruction of the basilar artery. So the longest stent available on the market is the Leo stent, 3.5 by 50, which is a very long one. And the advantage of a braided stent is that it is a tunnel. You can re-navigate through it. Conversely to the laser cut. Laser cut stent is very difficult to re-navigate. And we'll be using this Leo stent to deliver fluid diverter through the Leo stent. So that will be the second step to deliver a fluid diverter, and you will see why we have chosen the Silk Vista. And then we'll be delivering coils inside the aneurysm. So how was it performed? So we did perform this is the movie. So we are in place, Professor Moret and myself, to perform the treatment. This is the working projection, APN lateral that has been chosen. So the first thing is to exit from the sac. So here we can exit from the sac of the aneurysm with the small microcatheter. It's a 17 microcatheter, which is easier to navigate than the 21. And here we were able to find the exit. The tip of the microcatheter is here. And it's a little bit complex, and as you can see, we have been accelerated a little bit the speed in order to save time. And then we perform exchange maneuver, and you see that when you have to deal with the 21, it's even more difficult. And it will be even more difficult with the 27 microcatheter. So here the 21 microcatheter is in place, distant to the basilar artery. There is a loop here, so you have to get rid of the loop. So this is the Leo stent, which is now in place. I'm sorry, this is the exchange guide wire. We deliver the exchange guide wire pretty distant in order to deliver the stent very distant. This is important to straighten the microcatheter here. So the guide wire now is removed, and as you can see, because it was navigated distally, we were able to remove the loop. So this is the way to get rid of the loop. And you reintroduce the wire to double check that everything is tightened, and then we trap a 17 microcatheter in the aneurysm just to perform the coil. This is a run to check there is no bleeding, no problem, no thromboembolic complication. So now we have the microcatheter that will be used to deliver the flow the stent. And we just draw with the system, we just draw a marker, which is very useful. And you can see that we'll be able to look at those markers on the non-subtracted view. So this is the minimal stent limit that is drawn on the AP and on the lateral. So this is the delivery of the stent. So once again, we have chosen the stent because it is the longest available on the market, and we need a long stent because it will shorten at the level of the aneurysm. So to make it visible, you have the platinum wire, which are seen here, and we'll be depositing the stent. Here you have the vessel, but even you remove the vessel because of the marker, you will see nicely where is the stent when you remove the vessel. Here we can remove the vessel and you still have the limit. So this is the deployment of the braided stent, and because there is no constraint, you see that it shortened a lot, conversely to a laser cut stent. But the advantage is that it's easier to re-navigate through the tunnels that you have deployed here. So this is the proximal part of the stent. So you have the scaffolding, which will be used to deliver the flow diverter. Then we try to re-navigate the microcatheter, as you can see in this situation. And as you can see, unfortunately, the 21 catheter is very difficult to manage because it's a little bit too large to navigate through the first stent. So you have an internal massage, as you can see, but we need to deliver this 21 catheter distance to deploy the flow diverter. And whatever you do, you see that you are blocked because of the large size of the microcatheter. So we try to push more distally the microcatheter, but we fail because of the lack of support. The catheter is really too big, so you can imagine that you just remove the wire, and it was impossible to re-navigate the 21 microcatheter because of this stepwise effect. Here you have the guide wire. It's not anymore the pusher from the Leo, and even with the guide wire, which is pushed very distally, you have the step effect due to the discrepancy between the 14 guide wire and the 21 catheter, which avoid to navigate more distally the catheter. So you can see that we are struggling. Professor Moore is struggling a lot. Of course, you have the risk of dislodging the stent and losing the access. So we tried for a long time, and again, this is finally we decided to switch for a 17 microcatheter. So this is a 17 microcatheter, and with the 17, it's much easier. You see that you are here. It took very short time to deliver a 17 microcatheter. And this is why we had to deliver a much smaller flow diverter. This flow diverter is the only flow diverter that can be delivered through a 17. And this is the delivery of the Silk Vista through a 17 microcatheter, just because we were unable to navigate the 21 through the Leo stent. So once again, we use this marker. This is the delivery of the first silk. Unfortunately, it doesn't it doesn't exist in longer size. We have no choice, and this is the delivery of the flow diverter. So we are pretty short. You have the support from the stent. This is the proximal part, and of course we have to cover all this length of the disease portion. So this is the proximal part of the LEO stent. You can see here the border of the Silk Vista. We renavigate the 17 microcatheter very distant, and we'll be using a second stent. This is the second stent. It's a little bit shorter because we didn't have a longer one. And this is the delivery, and of course you have to cover all along this distance, keeping in mind that the silk is too small in diameter, but there was no other solution. You have to make a compromise. So this is the distal part of the second flow diverter. And you see that it's not that easy to manage this kind of giant aneurysm. So you see here the stent which is progressively opening. You see the stent here, which is a little bit too small compared to the LEO stent, too small in diameter. But once again, we didn't have the choice because you have seen that we failed to deliver the Vasco 21. So this is delivery of the stent. Of course, the stent shortened a lot because there is no constraint. And this is the navigation of the catheter within the second flow diverter. We use exactly the same wire as for the pipeline. You are used to the pipeline. This is exactly the same way to do it. And again, you see now that you have a better position. This is a control angio. After delivering the stent and the flow diverter, there is a little bit of problems here. As you can see, there is a slow flow distal. There is a slow flow distal which might be due to thromboembolic complication. And we try to understand what's going on, so we try to select another view. And as you can see, there is a strange aspect on the screen. So this is another working projection to better understand what's going on. And if you look carefully, there is no, in this view, there is no clotting point. You have no supine position with the aneurysm. So what we'll be doing is to deliver some coils inside the aneurysm. So this is navigation of the catheter through the stent again. Try to navigate again because we lost the access. And we decided to treat with a third stent because the proximal part of the aneurysm was not covered. So we did deliver one here, the second here, and this is the third one to land in the safe portion of the basilar. So it's a pretty difficult, but you don't have any other choice than to use telescopic stent because the long stent cannot exist in this size. So now you have the stent which is covering the flow diverter, which is covering the proximal part of the basilar artery. We use a balloon, which is a hyperglide balloon, to perform the angioplasty. Sorry, this is a Copernic balloon, but it's the same kind of balloon. And you see here the balloon. The balloon is here to be sure that you have a good apposition of the flow diverter. So this is, you will see the different inflation of the balloon. Of course, you have to be sure that you are in the lumen of the construction. This is the progressive inflation of the balloon to be sure that it's, the stents are nicely open. So you know that, you see that for this kind of difficult treatment, we are at least two experimented operators because it's very useful to be two, because you have to check to so many things and you have to look at the 3D at the same time, always change the angulation. It's much more comfortable if you have to deal with two experienced operators. So here we do perform the angioplasty with the balloon at different level of the construction to be sure that you have a good apposition in the middle of the lumen. So there will be different inflation. You see that the stents are a little bit smaller than the Leo stent, and we'll be performing the angioplasty all along the vessel. So this is the post-op vasosity, and we carefully check for the good apposition all along the circumference of the vessel. And you have a nice view, which is the axial view, where you can see that you have a good apposition of the construction. So this is the run before coiling, and you have some flow arrest, but we will be delivering coils because we have the big fear of a delayed rupture of this aneurysm. So you have to decrease the amount of clot. You decrease the amount of clot by delivering coils inside the sac of the aneurysm. So you remember that we delivered the microcatheter for coiling before delivering the construction. We are a little bit anxious about the distal part of the construction. This is you have seen there was a little bit of stenosis proximal. So we perform again the angioplasty at the proximal part of the construction, because of course the big problem is to have a thrombose of the construction. So this is the second angioplasty. So this kind of treatment, they last 6 or 7 hours, so it's very long treatment. You have to carefully check all the different imaging modalities, and it requires a lot of attention when you have to deal with this kind of difficult treatment. So you should not be satisfied by this aspect. You don't see anymore the aneurysm, but the patient is having a big risk of having a delayed rupture. And so you have to feel so this is an injection inside the sac of the aneurysm, which is a little bit useless, so I don't know why I did that, but you see here that the aneurysm is excluded from the circulation, and to avoid having a biological reaction from the thrombus, you have to decrease the amount of thrombus that you accumulate. So this is why you have to replace the clot with something. So you use whatever is the coil, you don't care. The aim is to replace the clot by coils. So here where it's my coil, but you use all kind of coil to decrease the amount of clot which is trapped inside the sac of the aneurysm. So we did put quite a lot of coils, and at the end you see that you have a slow flow inside the basilar trunk. So it's a little bit bothering, and then we occlude the vertebral artery, because the vertebral artery is giving rise to the basilar trunk, so it's useless. We have to occlude the basilar artery, which is giving rise to the aneurysm. So the basilar trunk will be fed only through the left vertebral artery, which is the biggest one. So this is the final control. On the left, on the right it's occluded. On the left you have a pretty nice injection of the basilar artery. So when you have a nice picture, don't be confident, because any kind of complication can occur during the following hours. And you have to be careful, and you have to check that you have the good apposition of the construction. You have here all the axial view, which is seen at this level, the level of the green, and you see that you have a very nice view. This is after coiling. again, the coiling is to decrease the amount of clot trapped inside the aneurysm. And this is the final engine. Of course, immediately after, the patient worsened, because we know that this kind of aneurysm, they swell. And steroids are the only solution that we have, but they are totally inefficient, but you cannot do anything else. And the guy was not in a good shape. We knew that from the beginning, and this is why we have asked for preventive craniectomy, and this is why we try to decrease the amount of clot, because we know that the problem is that it is a biological reaction. The MR is not bad. You see that on the top, the basilar artery is circulating. And of course, you have a lot of ischemic lesion because you did so many maneuvers. You did so many maneuvers for so long time that you have ischemic spot a little bit everywhere. We were spending, I don't know, 6, 7, or 8 hours for the treatment of this aneurysm, especially on the cerebellar, on the two cerebellar hemisphere, you have this kind of ischemic spot. The good news is that 2 weeks after, the patient was still in the ICU. There is no bleeding. I had a big fear of a delayed bleeding for this kind of aneurysm. It's really not a simple way. I remind mechanical problem, it's a biological problem coming from the clot inside the aneurysm. And as you can see, the clinical follow-up is not that good. The guy is MRS-free, the young guy, 29-year-old. And he has a difficulty to walk, difficulty to swallow, difficulty to speak because of the compression in the posterior fossa. And then the patient was transferred for physiotherapy, and of course he was kept under antiplatelet treatment. And 3 months later, he progressively improved, but suddenly, when he was in the rehabilitation center, one morning he got a sudden onset of diplopia. And this is what we found. As you can see, as expected, you are never outside the problem. There is now an edema. It means that the clot is working. The clots start to behave in a different way. There is no ischemic lesion. The state is patent. So we ask the rehabilitation center to keep the patient and to give steroids, even we know that it's useless. But 3 days later, the guy again got an acute cerebellar syndrome. So he went back to the main city there, the west part of France. And as you can see, here is a very strange thing, meaning that the patient now is having a bleeding. You see here there is a rupture of the aneurysm, which is seen white, one in FLAIR, one in SWR. It means that you have enzymatic reaction from the clot, which has led to the rupture of this aneurysm, which was expected. It is the behavior of the clot. So even we have tried to decrease this problem, it is occurring. So it's a very complex disease, and then I was really afraid to lose the patient. So I didn't know what to do, so I asked the patient to come back to our hospital to try to more exclude the aneurysm from the circulation. So back, and this is the angio, which was at the time of the worsening, 3 months after the first treatment, and the basilar artery is patent, as you can see. But we decided to add another flow diverter to try to disconnect completely the aneurysm from the circulation. So it was very easy. We just put another flow diverter. We still have the construction. So really, it was very easy to deliver a stent. So this is the one to try to disconnect completely this thrombus portion. This is at the end of the treatment. It was really no problem. This persisted at the end of the treatment. Unfortunately, the patient woke up with the right hemiplegia. Don't ask me why, but this is what has happened. So we decided to deliver tirofiban IV, even there was no clotting problem. And you see that if you compare the pre-op MR to the day one, there is nothing new. You still have this edema, which is seen at the posterior aspect here, but nothing special. You have the edema, which is seen, but there is no bleeding, which was the big fear. But you can see that the edema is very impressive. You have the clot, which react to the change in the behavior inside the clot. Look at that. It's a huge edema, which is inducing a lot of problems to the patient. The basilar artery is patent, so after 2 weeks, again in the ICU, the patient was transferred to the physiotherapy. This is 6 months follow-up. Hopefully the patient didn't bleed in the meantime, and suddenly the clot changed. It became from a red clot to white clot, which is a much stable clot. And this is what you have here. Now you have the clot which is perfectly organized, and you have no more edema around. So it took 6 months to organize the clot, and nowadays we are a little bit naive to organize the clot. So this is 6 months after the treatment. You have a little bit of hyperplasia, as you can see, but you have a nice filling of the basilar artery. Of course, on the right side, we have occluded because it was giving rise directly to the vertebral artery. 1 year and a half after the treatment, the guy went back to work, and he now is back to practice sport regularly, paddle and swimming. And you can see that you have a progressive shrinkage. Now you are in the safe side because you have organized the clot. So be convinced that it's a matter of clotting problem. It's a biology that we don't understand. So it's very difficult to handle, technically speaking, but you have to be convinced that it's much difficult to organize the clotting problem. This is 2 years and a half after the treatment, and now I can say that the patient is cured and he has his life saved. But for 6 months, I was very afraid to lose the patient. Thank you.